The entire world is asleep. The streets are silent. The night is heavy and still. But somewhere in a small, quiet room, an old woman is awake. Her knees ache. Her eyes are swollen from years of tears, but she rises anyway. She makes wudu with cold water. She spreads her prayer mat, and she raises her hands, and she calls his name. She had been doing this every single night for 7 years. 7 years of tahajjud. 7 years of tears. 7 years of calling a name that belonged to a son who had forgotten Allah entirely. This is not just her story. This is a story about the mercy of Allah. And tonight, in these blessed nights of Ramadan, it is a reminder meant specifically for you. Her name was Maryam. She was 63 years old, living alone in a modest apartment in a quiet neighborhood. Her husband had passed 8 years ago, leaving her with memories, a small pension, and one son named Khalid. Khalid had been her everything. As a boy, he was the kind of child that made a mother's heart overflow. He memorized short surahs before he was 7. He never missed Fajr with his father. He would hold her hand walking to the masjid on Eid morning, and she remembers thinking in those moments that Allah had given her more than she deserved. But life has a way of pulling people into currents they never planned to swim in. University changed Khalid, not overnight, not dramatically, but slowly, the way a candle dims before it goes out. First, it was missing one prayer, then 2, then all of them. New friends replaced old values. A new city replaced old habits. And somewhere between the pursuit of money and the intoxication of a life without accountability, Khalid stopped being the boy who held his mother's hand to the masjid. He was now 28, successful by the world's standards, lost by every standard that actually mattered. He called his mother once a week, sometimes less. The conversations were short and hollow. She would ask how he was. He would say fine. She would remind him to pray. He would say, "Yes, Mama," and change the subject. And when he hung up the phone, he would feel a guilt he had learned to bury very quickly. But Maryam never buried anything. Every night, without fail, when the last third of the night descended and the world fell into its deepest sleep, she would rise. Her knees would protest, her back would ache, but she would rise. And she would stand before Allah and she would weep, and she would call her son's name, and she would beg, "Ya Allah, bring my Khalid back. Whatever it takes, bring him back to you." 7 years she had been making that same dua, and to her eyes, nothing had changed. Now, close your eyes for a moment and step into Khalid's world. You are in a glass office on the 14th floor of a building in a city that never sleeps. Your suit is expensive, your watch is expensive, your apartment is expensive. From the outside, your life looks like everything a young man could want. But there is something that lives in the space between 2 a.m. and 4 a.m. that you cannot name. A hollowness, a quiet that is too loud. You fill it with your phone, with Netflix, with late nights out, with anything that keeps you from sitting alone in silence long enough to hear it clearly. You have not prayed in years. You tell yourself you will get back to it someday, when things slow down, when life gets less busy, someday. But someday never comes. This particular night in Ramadan, Khalid was at a gathering with colleagues, not a party exactly, just people, food, Laughter, noise, the kind of gathering that feels good in the moment and empty the second you leave. He left at 2 a.m. His colleague, Tariq, offered him a ride. Tariq had been drinking, though Khalid did not know how much. He should have taken a taxi. He told himself it was a short distance. He got in the car. That was the last calm decision he would make for a very long time.
It happened at 3:17 a.m. Tariq took a corner too fast. The car skidded. Khalid grabbed the dashboard. And then there was a sound he will never forget for the rest of his life. The sound of metal meeting concrete, of glass shattering, of the world turning upside down and then going completely silent. And in that silence, in that split second between the crash and consciousness, Khalid experienced something he cannot explain to this day. He saw darkness, complete and total darkness, and in that darkness he felt something, not heard, felt, a warmth, a presence, and his mother's face, not as a memory, as something more real than anything he had ever seen with open eyes. And then he was back. Sirens, voices, someone pulling at his door. He was upright, breathing, confused. He looked at his hands, expecting blood. There was none. He looked around. Tariq was unconscious. The car was destroyed. First responders were everywhere. And Khalid had walked out with a cut on his forehead and a broken world inside his chest. A paramedic kept asking him if he was okay. He kept nodding, but he was not okay at all. Because sitting on the curb, wrapped in a foil blanket, watching the scene in front of him, Khalid was asking a question he had not asked in 7 years. Why am I alive? Not as a philosophical question, as a real one. The car was destroyed, Tariq was being airlifted, and he was sitting here, breathing, with a cut on his forehead. Why am I alive? And for the first time in 7 years, he already knew the answer had nothing to do with luck. They took him to the hospital, checked him over, told him he was extraordinarily lucky. He nodded at the word lucky, but it landed wrong in his chest. At 4 a.m., he was sitting alone in a hospital waiting room. Fluorescent lights, plastic chairs, the smell of antiseptic. Everyone around him was either asleep or distressed, and Khalid sat there with his phone in his hand, a name on his screen, his thumb hovering. He did not call his friends. He called his mother. And when he heard her voice, something in him that had been locked for 7 years simply broke open. "Mama." That was all he managed before the tears came. Not quiet tears, the kind of tears that come from somewhere so deep you did not know the place existed. The kind of tears that carry 7 years of distance and guilt and emptiness all at once. She did not panic. She did not ask what happened. She simply said, softly, the way only mothers can, I know, Habibi. Allah brought you back. I felt it in my sujood tonight. I felt it." She had been in Tahajjud at the exact moment of the crash. She had been calling his name. And Khalid sat in that hospital waiting room and wept like a child. And for the first time in 7 years, he did not try to stop himself. He came home 3 days later. His mother opened the door and held him for a long time without saying anything. He noticed how small she had become, how her hair had gone completely white, how her hands trembled slightly when she held his face to look at him, and he thought about all the nights she had spent in that small room, calling his name while he slept through his life. That first night home, he could not sleep. At 3 a.m., he heard movement, soft footsteps, the sound of water running, and then silence. He got up quietly and stood in the hallway. The door to his mother's room was slightly open, and through that small opening he watched her, 63 years old, knees that he knew ached, back that he knew hurt, spreading her prayer mat slowly, making her intention and raising her hands. He could not hear the words, but he knew his name was in them. It had always been in them. Something moved through Khalid in that moment that he still cannot fully describe. Shame, gratitude, love, awe, all of it at once, rushing through him like a flood. He went quietly to the bathroom, made wudu for the first time in 7 years. The water felt different than he remembered, or maybe he was different. He found an old prayer mat in the cupboard. He carried it to the hallway, and just outside his mother's door, in the silence of the last third of a Ramadan night, Khalid stood. He raised his hands, and he began. He did not remember all the words perfectly. He stumbled, he paused, but he stood, and he prayed. Inside the room, Maryam heard him. She recognized the sound of her son's voice reciting, broken and unpracticed, and the most beautiful sound she had ever heard in her life. And she fell into sujood, and she wept the way you weep when Allah answers a prayer you had been making for 7 years. 2 people, 1 hallway, the last third of a Ramadan night, and Allah was closer to them both than their own jugular veins. But here is what I want you to sit with tonight. Maryam prayed for 7 years without seeing a single visible result. 7 years of rising when her body wanted rest. 7 years of tears with no sign of change. 7 years of faith in a mercy she could not yet see. And Allah heard every single word. Not one dua was wasted. Not one tear fell unnoticed. Not one night of tahajjud was in vain. Maybe tonight you are the mother, rising in the darkness for someone you love who seems completely lost. Do not stop. Allah is listening. He has always been listening. Or maybe tonight you are Khalid, successful on the outside, empty on the inside, carrying a hollowness you keep trying to fill with everything except the one who created you. Allah is waiting for you tonight, not with anger, not with punishment, but with open arms, and a mercy so vast it swallowed 7 years of distance without hesitation. These are the blessed nights of Ramadan, the nights when the doors of heaven are open, the nights when du'as pierce the sky, the nights when Allah descends and calls out, "Is there anyone asking of me that I may give them? Is there anyone seeking my forgiveness that I may forgive them?" Do not let this Ramadan night pass you by. Make your wudu, spread your mat, raise your hands, and come back. Allah has been waiting for you all along. If this story moved your heart, please subscribe to the Muslim Narrative. New stories every week, crafted to remind you of what truly matters. Share this with someone who needs to hear it tonight. And do not forget to make dua in these blessed Ramadan nights. Assalamu alaikum.